To our power panel now, Hannah Cox, conservative writer and podcaster, and Julian Epstein, former Democratic chief counsel for the Judiciary Committee. Hannah, I want to start with you, and thank you both for being here. This seems to point a big finger at the former First Lady for who is, the sort of chief orchestrator of this cover-up. Is that how you read this?
Yeah, I think that's how I read it, and it's how most of the American people read it for years. We didn't need Jake Tapper to come out and write a book about this. What was going on was very apparent to most people in this country. They thought they were going to gaslight and censor their way through an administration, and it did not work because the American people are smarter than that. The people who had the most to gain by a senile Joe Biden staying in power were quite obviously his wife, who was getting to call a lot of the shots, his criminal children, who needed his protection in that office, and these staffers who have been with him and have been loyal to him for many, many decades, who were finally getting the payoff they thought they were owed and getting to call a lot of the shots and getting to wield a lot of power. Now, there were a lot of people in the Democratic Party as well that were complicit in this, and I think that were asleep at the wheel. But really, you have to look at the inner circle. You have to look at the doctors. You have to look at who actually had the most access to Biden, which was very limited over the past couple of years. And it's very clear to see who was going to benefit the most if they were able to weaken Bernie's us and slip him back in for another 4 years.
Julian, what's the counterpoint to that?
I wish I had a good one. I mean, was Jill Biden our Lady Macbeth? Perhaps, but I think, as was pointed out, this was a scandal that involved the entire, much of the Biden White House, the entire Democratic Party, and the entire news media. Democrats spent the last 4 years, Jackie, talking about the J6 insurrection. Well, what is an insurrection if not the quiet takeover by unelected staff of the nuclear code and the decision-making of the Democratic Party? And there's extensive polling showing now that the Democrats have a trust deficit when it comes to all the major issues. Well, now they have a big trust deficit on the question of their own integrity. And like any relationship, you cannot repair the breach until you confront the issue. And so the Democrats' argument, let's move on, is not going to cut it. They need to confront the issue, as the media does, and there needs to be some accountability. So I think the idea that they can move on and avoid congressional scrutiny or other types of scrutiny is just whistling past the graveyard.
Well, Democrats are certainly looking toward the midterms after major election losses in 2024, but you've got a new opinion piece arguing a Democrat win could doom their long-term future. It says Democrats desperately want to control the U.S. House of Representatives after the midterm 2026 elections. However, their plan to wield power will likely doom their political future, but could give Republicans a golden opportunity. And it points to recent polling that shows Republican momentum. A recent poll shows 38% say they're satisfied with how things are going in the country, and that is up 20% from this month just 2 years ago. Some in the party are frustrated with the Democrats' latest plans to right the ship, and a reported $20 million proposal to win back male voters by studying how to talk to them is part of that. One Democrat told Rolling Stone they skimmed that proposal and immediately closed it because it was so, quote, bleeping stupid. And another said it's beyond embarrassing that in the year 2025, the Democratic Party wants to spend tens of millions of dollars to figure out how to talk to half the population. Hannah, are you at all surprised by this?
I'm not surprised. It's frankly hilarious. I mean, Democrats don't need to talk to men. They need to come up with policies that actually work for men, namely enabling men to get good, dignified jobs. Men want to be a part of building things. They want to be a part of powering the country. Joe Biden stripped them of that ability. He literally blocked thousands of good-paying energy jobs that would have gone to working-class men from the country over the past 4 years. And all he did in the process was outsource emissions to China because our exports were cleaner than theirs. But he did it to appease the climate Nazis. It was all virtue signaling. And ultimately, there were real victims. The economy, the climate actually, but then also working-class men. Meanwhile, Trump has come in and he has cleaned house in only 5 months. He's got an energy sector. He's coming in and cleaning the TVA up that has been outsourcing American jobs overseas. That's the kind of political backbone men respect and are looking for.
Julian, where do you see this going? Because we just saw an effort that looks just like this with a beer drinking, shotgun wielding Tim Walz.
Yes, let's step back for a second. I mean, I haven't met a single man that thinks Tim Walz is relatable as a masculine figure. These Band-Aid approaches all mask something that is called denialism. You talk about the 5 stages of death. Denialism is the first stage. The fundamental problem that Democrats have is not their language they use. The fundamental problem that progressives and Democrats have is a worldview that characterizes this country as oppressors and oppressed. And the problem with that worldview, Jackie, is that there's no empirical data to support that.
Yeah.
And the public, by about 80%, rejects that. And so the Democrats have to confront that, but they really sort of can't, so they come up with these Band-Aid solutions. And again, it's just part of a bigger problem of denialism.
That story will continue. Thank you both for being here. Appreciate your time.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.